Track there from Corey, yeah, it is their brand new one. It is called Dream Life here on Kiwi. 18 minutes past 8 now on the Radio Wammo breakfast. And coming up just after 8:30, looking forward to heading on up to the farm up in Hokianga there, chili farm. I guess one of my favourite things to do is eat chilies. That's one of my pastimes. I had a lot of chili last night. Don't want to hear about that. Right now, here we go.
If you add the Māori Party's 3 seats to either of these two, either the right or the left could actually govern under this scenario. But the story of this poll is National's slide, and it's been punished for its bungled budget. While John Key was hobnobbing at the Queen's knees up back home, the beehive was burning.
We are reversing the decision.
Reversal means a U-turn, of course, a humiliating backdown. The plan to cut teacher numbers was abandoned, but the damage is done. National drops 4 points in our poll, and with it goes its grip on power.
So when you consider all the challenges that
yes, indeed. Loving Duncan Garner's use of words there. Hobnobbing at the Queen's knees up is what he said there. Of course, it is State of It with Selwyn Manning from livenews.co.nz looking at the polls today. Good morning, Selwyn.
Yeah, good morning, Glenn.
Yes, a slight reversal in National's fortunes.
Yes, there is. I mean, what we can see here is the trend is actually starting to display itself. And, some people may say, well, what's the relevance of a poll when the government, the National Party has just won an election and it's got itself into government? But it's very important, obviously, for not only us who are trying to actually gauge the mood of the public on such things as its education policies, the Sky City Convention deal fiasco, etc., etc. It's really vitally important for the National Party itself to actually gauge where it is and what kind of support it's gleaning from the general public, Glenn.
Yeah, now, as you say, the big poll is obviously election day. But I was talking to Russell Norman on Wednesday, and he was saying that they were doing nightly polls. They were polling the electorate nightly.
Yeah, that's right. National Party is doing that. And you can see that it's very, very sensitive to really where the public is swinging. It knows, for example, that if a trend is set in early in its second term, and that trend is starting to drop, its support base is dropping away. It knows that it takes a mammoth effort to get it back. And I think in previous bulletins with you, Glenn, kind of illustrated it in this way. If we look back to when the Helen Clark government was in, around 2005, from 2000 to 2005, it was fairly well supported by the general voting public. By 2005, it had put out a few things like it had allowed GE to come into New Zealand, the GMOs, etc., etc. And there were huge protests around the place. Now, we could see that the public mood was starting to think twice about its support for Labour. It had already lost the Alliance Party and it wasn't picking up the support of those on the centre-left. But all of those kind of things were starting to come into fray. It was almost like a vessel, and this is what I mean about illustrating this. It was like a great big ocean line of public opinion that had attached to Labour's dock in a harbour. Yeah. And then by degrees over those years from 2005 to 2008, that vessel started heading out to sea. Now, in some ways, it takes a hurricane to get that ship back on dock, if you like, if you're a political party in government. Now, that's why National is got the jitters, really, and it's really trying as much as possible to gauge the public mood, not just on its popularity and its preferred Prime Minister, and we'll get to that point in a minute, but on what how its decisions are resonating out there amongst those voters. And yep, nightly polls have been going on. You can bet your bottom dollar that people like David Farah, that are sitting there, with his courier poll research business, and he'll be on that phone, excuse me, and he'll be saying, these things are not going down well, you're actually burning out there. Meanwhile, Labour and Green, that red-green coalition seems to be gelling with the public now. The trends we can see, since the election in the polls, we can see one thing happening here. You can see Labour climbing back. You can also see the Greens maintaining their position and increasing in some polls. And that bloc now has the numbers to form a government should an election, but the election won't be held in 2040. Meanwhile, this is very significant
Yeah.
here, Glenn. John Key, who used to lead his own party, he was always, as preferred Prime Minister, he was well out in front of the percentage points that his party...
Well, he won the election, right? Because the Nationals' policies were never popular in the election. It was just all about John Key.
Yeah. Now, John Key, who used to be like 55%, even on some polls well above that, and his party down around 47, maybe 50%, maybe 51, he was always a good 5 points ahead. That's completely reversed. John Key, now in the polls, is down around 40%, 40.5 at best, and his party is up around 45 to 47, depending on the poll. Now, that is complete reverse. If you look at John Key's popularity, it's gone down by around 20%. Now, if you had a room full of 1,000 people and you said, those who do not want John Key as your Prime Minister, get up and leave the room, 600 would walk out.
Yeah.
That's an absolute worry. Now, he's still a country mile out there ahead of people like David Shearer and Russell Norman and Winston Peters. But it's still the trend that National will be looking at. The trend is going sour for it, while those alternative parties, meaning those that, the Labour Party and the Green Party and, the others, they've got options there. New Zealand First is in the mix.
Yeah.
You've got the Mana Party sitting there and perhaps on a confidence and supply kind of deal. This trend, they're on the climb. And it seems that the public is very susceptible and very sympathetic to solution-based policies. And those solutions is what you look for when you look for a tipping point in a government's longevity line. And that tipping point is starting to show, and it's that the country does not seem to like the decisions that are coming out of the national-led government, and it's looking for solutions. And then when the opposition parties come through with those solutions, they're on the road, and it's just a matter of time, and they've won.
Well, it seems like the John Key brand and the John Key Band-Aids is no longer enough to cover up the ideology and the agenda from the National Party in this term.
Yeah. That's one factor, and I think it's an extremely important factor. There are tensions we can see within the National Party. We can see the far-right ideologues are wanting their buck now. They're wanting their slice of the policy pie. Meanwhile, Bill English, and he was able to pull off a bit of a miracle there and put out pretty much a centrist type of budget. There are tensions inside there. It seems to me it's like this, that the party itself, the National Party in government, needs very strong political leadership. It doesn't seem to have that. For most of this year, we've seen John Key in New Zealand, but for a significant amount of the time, he has been on holiday up there in Europe. He has been on offshore type of jaunts, going to the Queen's thing most recently, going across to North Europe to NATO, going across to the United States, etc., at a time when the National Party itself actually needs strong leadership, prime ministerial leadership, yes. And I just wonder whether or not, we've mentioned this in the past, whether or not John Key is able to actually meet all of those challenges and being everything for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think National is starting to suffer that. What is really lacking National's strategic vision is a coordinated plan that is rolling out, that it feels comfortable that the public is along for the ride. It knows that its policies and its ideology, like you addressed, they address the wants of a particular narrow band of New Zealanders, mostly aligned to the wealthy or corporations. And the rest of the country that actually puts National into government, they're not necessarily in their interests. And I think Nationalists...
Well, this is going to come across quite smug, Selwyn, and it probably is. But this is all no longer going to be my problem. I'm going to vote in 2014, but for what happens between now and then, I couldn't care less. New Zealand, you just got to make the right decision in 2014, because I'm out of here.
You're out there. You'll be back after the day is done. But a wonderful thing for you, Glenn. One of the things I always felt, and I know you the same, you go overseas and the problems of every country you go to are no longer your own, and you can actually enjoy getting on with things without being burdened by the weight of your own country's domestic problems. You can come back fresh and then put your hand to the till and help steer the thing in the right direction. But I've got to say, Glenn, before I go, it's been an absolutely wonderful thing, not just for me, with the Live News project in recent times, but going back with Scoop and Kevin List and you on a daily basis at Scoop when Kevin worked there, and he's now with the Green Party.
Yeah.
Would get there and talk and chew the fat over politics every day to your evening audience.
Yeah.
And that's always really wonderful for all of us, Glenn, and it's been an absolute... to say it's a privilege is a cliche. It's been absolutely fantastic. It's been rewarding and an education working with you. And I just got to say that it's to thank you for your wonderful talent, that dedication that you have had to pioneering this new age of broadcast, radio broadcast and webcast media. And a lot of people listening on radio right now will not be aware that while you're interviewing people on radio, that you're pushing gadgets all around you and streaming live out to the internet for anyone who wants to watch it out there too. And that kind of talent is what New Zealand needed in this last, say, 3 years while the technology develops. And you've shown us how to do it. Without sounding like I'm an absolute groupie, you've had that grace to share your talent with us and also your trade secrets, and I just want to say thanks for that.
Oh, Selwyn, really appreciate that. And from my side, we're going back with your involvement with Scoop, and then to Live News. That ability to get my the content from Kiwi and from the show out there onto the web, in front of an audience, has been integral not only to the success of this show but also my personal success and my personal career path. It's been totally integral and important to all of that. So, Selwyn, thanks so much for your contributions and thoughtful pieces to the show as well. Wonderful stuff.
Thanks to that Kiwi audience for putting up my monotone voice all this time.
Good stuff, Selwyn. Time now here on Kiwi is